Hi, and welcome to Progressive Short Takes. This is your host, Joe Firestone. In this episode, I want to talk about the race in Washington's 10th Congressional District. It looks like a hot one. Help me do this. I'm going to share an article that appeared in the American Prospect. The title of the article is "The Future of the Democratic Party Goes Through This District." And it was written for the American Prospect by Alexander Salmon on October 22nd, 2020. There's a picture of the progressive candidate in this district. Her name is Beth Badolio. And she's backed by a broad collection of progressive groups in her run for the U.S. House. So last year, what Amazon did was to try to buy the Seattle City Council. It was the first time the company used its considerable financial resources to intervene in a major way in local politics. Spent over $1 million to boost the business-friendly candidates and quash progressives across the board. Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and other progressives openly condemned the corporate intrusion into the political process and warned about the precedent it would set going forward. Incredibly, Amazon's blitz failed. Of the 7 candidates it backed financially, only 2 of them won. And one of them was a progressive incumbent backed by labor. The entire effort was a disaster, quote unquote, according to various tech and business publications. And at the heart of that botch, says Alex Salmon, was its mastermind, Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce president, whose name is Marilyn Strickland, who raked in $1.45 million in Amazon money and then orchestrated the doomed strategy to deliver those city council seats. Now Strickland, the former mayor of Tacoma, Washington, is aiming for higher office, running for an open house slot in Washington's 10th Congressional District. That's a solid blue seat in a broadly Democratic state. The previous congressman in that state was Denny Heck, who is now retiring. Washington State's primary process advances the top 2 vote-getters to the general election, and Strickland emerged from a crowded field into a Democrat-on-Democrat contest with state legislator and environmental activist Beth Badolio. While Amazon hasn't absolutely deluged Strickland with money, she's received significant financial support from the Chamber of Commerce that Amazon sponsors, as well as other area corporates like Boeing. Strickland and Dolio are like 2 poles of Democratic politics in both Washington State and the nation as a whole. Strickland represents the interests of massive corporations that benefit from sideways tax policies, and Dolio represents a climate-centered environmental activism. Democrats pride themselves on their big tent. Strickland and Dolio are at far opposite ends of it. Beth Dolio is part organizer and part politician. She directed the Power Pass Power passed coal campaign, one of the most successful and high-profile environmental fights of the decade, which prevented the construction of 7 separate coal export terminals in the Pacific Northwest. She then ran for and won a seat in the legislature, quickly becoming Washington's most active lawmakers on climate, housing, and health care. And she said to Alex Salmon, quote, "I was really frustrated how there weren't enough and how there weren't enough women in the legislature, and we weren't moving climate policy at scale, doing nothing for years." She's a supporter of the Green New Deal, and Medicare for all. She's refused all fossil fuel and corporate PAC money. Her campaign has brought together a unique coalition of supporters, binding the legacy, environmental, and LGBT groups with youth, activists, and national Democrats. She got the broad support of labor, including the nurses, teachers, firefighters, and other unions, a constituency that doesn't often ally itself with the environmental movement. Local tribal leadership, whom Strickland alienated as Tacoma's mayor by backing fossil fuel infrastructure projects that they said were in violation of their treaty rights, is on Dolio's side as well. She's also been a priority of new progressive forces in Washington and Washington, D.C. She's endorsed by multiple local chapters of the Sunrise Movement, as well as the national chapter, which is in the midst of a 100,000 dial phone banking operation on her behalf. She was one of the first endorsements issued by Senator Markey after he vanquished Joe Kennedy in his Senate primary. She's been endorsed enthusiastically by Pramila Jayapal, co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and a Washington Congresswoman herself. And Beth Dolio got the endorsement of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her courage to change the PAC. Quote, "Beth is the only candidate that will be an ally to youth and to environmental advocates," said a lady by the name of Mariana Sanchez, the politics lead of Sunrise Tacoma. Also, Dolio is backed by a new, more institutional Democratic force, the Congressional Progressive Caucus PAC. This is the first cycle in which the CPC has been involved, spending on behalf of progressive candidates in Democrat races, echoing the strategy pursued by progressive groups like Sunrise and Justice Democrats. Dolio is one of the just 3 candidates they've spent big on in this cycle, joining New York's Mondaire Jones and Nebraska's Cara Eastman. And she factors in significantly to their strategy. In the primary, they paid to get her on TV ads and just announced another 6-figure buy on her behalf. Strickland, meanwhile, made an early attempt to cast herself as a progressive, touting an environmental record in the primary and pledging not to take PAC money from corporations. But once she made it to the runoff, she rescinded that pledge and has been reaping the benefits of corporate largesse. I'm not going to go through the whole rest of it, but you're getting the picture. Basically, Strickland is a corporate candidate who has benefited from the name recognition of a multi-term stint as mayor of Tacoma. She dubiously claimed to have led the city out of the crippling aftermath of the recession of 2008 to 10. In fact, Tacoma bounced back more slowly than neighboring Seattle, and the state broadly, a lopsided recovery that hurt the region's black residents in particular. And black Tacomans were saddled with an unemployment rate 65% higher than the city at large, while big business flourished. In 2018, she left the mayor's office to take over at the Seattle Chamber of Commerce. So she's the Chamber of Commerce candidate. She's the corporate candidate. It's absolutely clear that she's that particular candidate. So the question is, will the corporates win in this contest, or will the progressives win? Clearly, Beth Dolio is the progressive candidate who's earned that particular label. This contest is really important then. And it's a contest that has to be won by Dolio, who compared to Strickland is right, okay, on just about everything from a progressive standpoint. Have to support her as much as we can. The Washington 10th has to be turned, has to become a progressive congressional district. Dolio would bring another activist voice to the Congress, says Alex Salmon, someone who understands how to wield political power at a number of levels, both where policy is made and in the communities where it's actually enacted. This cycle has seen Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush added to their ranks as Black Lives Matter activists. Washington State now has a chance to send the one of its own. I've been working it on the inside and the outside, said Dolio. And to quote again, we need someone to fight, fight, fight for people and our planet. Beth Dolio looks like a great one to do this. I made a contribution to her myself, and I urge you to support her. I think she's a really, really good one. So, that's it for this Progressive Short Take. I hope you liked it. I'll be back again shortly with another Progressive Short Take.